The emergency room doors slid open with a soft chime, and in walked something no medical staff had been trained to face. Not a man bleeding, not a mother in labor, but a lion, a white lion, soaked from the storm. Padding silently on tile, he didn't roar, he didn't growl. He carried a child in his jaws, wrapped in an old blue flannel. And somehow, nobody moved, not out of fear, but out of something deeper, as if the world itself had gone still to let this creature pass. Before we begin this unforgettable story, would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments, and if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move you? Please give this video a like and consider subscribing. The sky over Montana was washed in the gold of early summer, clear. Unbroken light pouring down from a high, pale blue dome. The wind moved gently across the ridges of pine that circled the Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary, humming low through the branches like breath caught in thought. At 8:14 a.m., the sanctuary gates opened to the first visitors of the day, couples with cameras, grandparents with curious children, and a group of teenagers half distracted by their phones. The air smelled of pine, earth, and the distant promise of heat. Hunter's enclosure sat at the far edge of the sanctuary, close to the tree line, a wide habitat carved from grass, boulders, and shade trees. It had been his home for the last 6 years. A Bengal tiger, rescued from a roadside circus near Albuquerque. Hunter was now 9 years old, weighing in at nearly 600 pounds. He was broad-shouldered and lean, his coat a burnished orange brushed with ink-black stripes. His eyes were golden and calm, old soul eyes, as one of the keepers once described them. He was known for his stillness, even at feeding time. Hunter never lunged. He'd pad to his food slowly, lay down, and eat with the grace of a king on holiday. Parents felt safe letting their kids stand at the thick glass panel to watch him. Teachers called him the sanctuary's ambassador of peace. But on this morning, everything changed. It began with a low rumble, just one, long, slow, pulled from somewhere deep in Hunter's chest. A sound not of hunger nor dominance, but something else entirely. The nearest guests, 3 kids with strawberry ice cream cones and their father, froze as the tiger stood. His body taut, nostrils flaring. Then came the roar. It tore through the air like a warning shot. Visitors turned, some gasped. A woman dropped her sun hat. Birds took off from the surrounding treetops. It came again, louder, sharper, and this time it was followed by motion. Hunter began to pace. He moved in tight circles, fast, cutting through the grass with nervous precision. His claws tore into the dirt as he swiped at the ground. Again and again. He circled, paused, then roared again, throwing his head back so the sound echoed through the metal frames of the enclosure like thunder. Gasps erupted across the crowd. Several parents instinctively pulled their children back. A few teenagers filmed with shaky hands, half laughing, half alarmed. Hunter didn't notice them. He turned suddenly and launched his weight toward the northern fence, slamming his paws into the base of the reinforced mesh. The frame shook but held. A child screamed. 2 visitors stumbled back, knocking over a stroller. Panic crept in. Staff radios crackled, but amid the shouts, among the flurry of retreat, one small figure didn't move. Eli, a boy of 5 with a pale complexion, a baseball cap 2 sizes too large, and a soft gray hoodie pulled down over his shorts. He had a dimple on his right cheek, though few ever saw it. He rarely smiled. Eli was quiet, not shy exactly, just deeply inward, like his thoughts lived in places no one else could reach. Ever since his father had passed away, he'd spoken little, but he came to the sanctuary every Saturday, always asking for the tiger first. He liked Hunter, and Hunter, somehow, seemed to like him. Eli stood alone now at the glass panel, palm flat against the surface, his nose barely clearing the bottom edge. His eyes didn't flinch, even as Hunter roared again and clawed the ground in fury, but that fury, it wasn't aimed at Eli. Hunter wasn't looking at the boy at all. He was looking past him, past the glass, past the crowds, past the food carts and stroller paths. His golden eyes were fixed beyond the sanctuary's border, to the forested ridge that curved like a spine behind the park. His body tensed again, shoulders rising and falling, each breath ragged and urgent. He let out a sound now, not quite a roar, not quite a growl, something between the two, a tremor of alarm. Eli tilted his head, curious. Behind the boy, someone called out, "Step back, sweetie," but he didn't respond. His hand stayed pressed to the glass. Hunter's gaze flicked down just once, acknowledging the small figure, then darted up again toward the trees. Wind stirred through the pines. And then, silence. Hunter stopped pacing. He crouched low, the way a wildcat does before a storm, not ready to pounce, but to listen. His ears perked forward, his tail, usually relaxed, now snapped in tense flicks. He was bracing himself. The crowd murmured in confusion. The panic eased into unease. A staffer finally approached and gently ushered Eli away from the glass. The boy resisted only slightly, looking back once at the tiger who was no longer roaring, no longer clawing, but simply watching. Always watching. And still, no one understood what he had seen. The wind had turned dry and restless as the sun climbed higher over Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary. Long pine shadows stretched across the tiger enclosure, while the distant tree line beyond the sanctuary's back wall whispered with unseen movement. Rachel Matthews stood near the edge of the enclosure, her arms folded across her chest, eyes locked on the figure pacing behind the reinforced mesh. Hunter. He wasn't roaring now. He wasn't clawing. He was watching. Rachel had worked with big cats for years, long enough to know when fear was real. And what she saw in Hunter's stance wasn't agitation. It was focus. He wasn't reacting to the crowd, nor to any provocation. He was looking past them all, toward the hill behind the sanctuary wall, as if something there had unsettled his core. "He's not being aggressive," she muttered to herself. "He's warning us." A voice behind her answered. "That's what I think too." She turned. Standing a few feet away was a man in a field jacket and dusty boots, holding a rolled-up map in one hand and a tired expression in the other. He looked to be in his late 30s, with dark hair pulled back into a low knot. A lean build, and skin sun-worn in places most people never exposed. He nodded slightly, his stance cautious. "Sorry," he said, "didn't mean to sneak up." "Marcus Dwyer. I'm the geotech consultant, just arrived this morning." Rachel studied him, her guard reflexively up. "You're here to assess the ridge." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, soil integrity, seismic risks, slope movement, the usual. But after seeing the tiger." "Hunter, right, Hunter. After seeing his behavior." "I thought maybe I should ask you first. Has he done this before?" "Noom," Rachel said. "He hasn't." They both looked at the tiger, who had paused his pacing to crouch low again, muscles taut, ears perked forward. "Whatever he hears," Marcus said softly. "He heard it before we did." Rachel tilted her head. "You've worked with animals before." Marcus hesitated, not directly, but I've learned to listen when nature starts talking. Rachel narrowed her eyes. Something in his tone. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't smug, but it wasn't casual either. She had heard voices like that before, often in the silence after disaster. She looked at the map tube in his hand. "Oh, Elkhorn Quarry," she said, suddenly remembering that was you. "Wasn't it?" His face tensed, just for a moment. "Yes." There was a pause. Heavy as stone, 5 years earlier. A slope failure at Elkhorn Quarry had killed 2 hikers during a volunteer dig. Investigations found that warnings, subtle ground shifts, low-frequency tremors, had been noted but not acted upon. "You ignored a warning," Rachel said flatly. "I underestimated it," Marcus replied, quiet but firm. "And I carry that every day." Rachel folded her arms tighter. She wasn't one to forgive easily, especially when lives were lost. But even now, even as her gut wanted to push him away, another part of her, the part that had felt the tremble in the ground that morning, the one that had watched Hunter's eyes, knew something was different. "You think the slope's unstable?" she asked. "I think there's a chance," Marcus said, "and I'm not here to get it wrong again." Hunter stood, body angled toward the hill. His tail flicked once, slow and deliberate. Rachel looked between the tiger and the man. She didn't trust him yet, but she trusted Hunter. "Then, let's go see it." Night fell over the Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary with a hush only deep forests know. The scent of resin and cool stone floated above the soil as the stars blinked quietly into the sky. Most visitors were gone. The walkways swept clean, the food kiosks locked, but inside the security room, the sanctuary's night staff monitored the enclosures through a bank of grainy infrared cameras, sipping stale coffee under buzzing fluorescent lights. Hunter's enclosure was still lit by the dim perimeter lights. The tiger was awake, unusual for this hour. He had begun to circle again, not with the erratic pace of panic, but with purposeful calculation. Then, he moved toward the far corner, northwest, where the fence line tapered toward the service road. It was a stretch few guests noticed, overgrown, slightly sunken, and half-shadowed by a leaning oak from the surveillance console. Andrea Cho, the night shift supervisor, leaned closer to the screen. Andrea, a Korean-American in her early 40s, with cropped black hair and a face that rarely showed emotion, was not one to overreact. She had been an Army technician for 15 years before joining the sanctuary team, and nothing startled her easily, but what she saw made her eyebrows twitch. Hunter began to paw the earth at the base of the fence. Slow, forceful scrapes. Again, and again. His body swayed low, as if trying to dig, then he paused, lifted his massive head, and released a low, throaty growl, aimed not toward the glass viewing area, but toward the distant dark of the ridge. Andrea clicked record. The next morning, Rachel arrived before dawn. The staff hadn't even started the feeding rounds. Andrea met her at the gate with a flash drive in hand. "Hunter's up to something," Andrea said simply, inside the control shed. Rachel watched the footage in silence when the video ended. She didn't speak for several long seconds. "He's digging," she said finally. At the exact corner Marcus flagged, Andrea nodded. "There's a soil depression there. I checked it after shift, soft like a pillow. If it rains—" Rachel didn't finish the thought. She marched across the sanctuary to Marcus's temporary field station, a camper van retrofitted with sensor gear and topographic models. He stood outside, brushing dirt from his hands. Having just returned from a pre-dawn survey of the ridgeline. "I was hoping you'd come," Marcus said. "You found something?" she asked. "I found something that isn't there anymore." He led her inside, unfolding a printout of elevation scans taken over the last 48 hours. A shaded portion at the ridge crest showed subtle but measurable subsidence, ground sinking, barely perceptible, but consistent. It's moving, Marcus said. The whole hill. Slowly, not enough to slide yet. But if pressure builds or we get rain or vibration or a stampede of guests, exactly. Rachel took a breath. We need to rope off the entire northwest quarter. Today. She stormed into the administration building just after 9 a.m. The structure was modern, all clean lines and windows facing the valley below. At the head of the main conference room sat Glenn Armitage, the sanctuary's operations director, tall, pale, balding, with gold-rimmed glasses and a voice that had once belonged to a used car salesman. Glenn was known for playing politics before safety. He looked up from his tablet. Rachel, something wrong with the tigers again. Not the tigers. Rachel snapped. The ground. Marcus confirmed slope activity. Hunters responding to it. He's been digging at a weakness in the enclosure wall. If the slope gives, it'll take out the viewing platform. Glenn smiled thinly. You're asking to close off a third of our main attraction during peak season. I'm asking you to keep children from standing above a potential landslide. Glenn exchanged a glance with Margot, the PR officer, a petite redhead with permanent worry lines and a clipboard full of visitor numbers. We can't jump at every shadow. Rachel, it's summer. The tiger's probably stressed. The heat's been brutal. He's not stressed. Rachel replied, he's signaling. If we don't listen, we're the ones who'll be sorry. Glenn raised a brow. You want me to evacuate part of the park because a tiger's been digging. Marcus, who had entered quietly behind Rachel, stepped forward, not just digging, warning. I've seen this before, and I ignored it once. Glenn blinked at the new voice. You must be the geotech guy. Marcus nodded. And I'll put it in writing. That corner is vulnerable. If you want to wait for cracks to swallow a railing, that's your choice, but I won't sign off on it. Glenn's smile finally faltered. The silence hung. Rachel didn't wait. Until you make a call. I'll be roping it off myself. She turned. Storming from the room. Marcus lingered for a moment, his voice quieter. He's trying to protect us. Maybe for once. We should return the favor by noon. Rachel had recruited 2 interns, yellow hazard tape, and 3 temporary signs reading Restricted Zone. Guests grumbled, children pouted, but Rachel didn't care. She looked up once more toward the ridgeline, where clouds were gathering low, and somewhere behind her, in the enclosure that bordered the slope. Hunter lay still, eyes open, staring into the trees, waiting. It was the day of the Summer Wild Festival, the busiest day of the year at Yellowstone Wildlife Sanctuary. Warm air shimmered over the paved walkways, alive with scents of kettle corn and fried dough. Children darted past ice cream carts and wildlife booths, arms full of pamphlets and souvenir plush toys. Folk music hummed faintly from a raised wooden stage near the amphitheater, where a bluegrass trio played under a canopy of red, white, and green bunting above it all. The Montana sky was cloudless, so wide and blue it seemed to stretch forever. In the center plaza, volunteers in matching T-shirts handed out maps and Junior Ranger stickers. Among them was Lacey Boudreau, a 17-year-old summer volunteer with freckles across her nose and a nervous smile. A junior at Livingston High. Lacey had a quiet demeanor but a keen eye. She loved animals more than people. And Rachel had taken a soft spot for her, ever since Lacey spent an entire lunch hour calming a frightened duck caught in the drainage canal. Lacey was manning the East Trail booth when she noticed a familiar figure. Eli, the boy, as always, walked with small, careful steps. His baseball cap was tipped slightly back, exposing the line of his forehead, and his hands clutched a folded map, worn at the creases. His mother, Claire, stood a few feet behind him, speaking with another parent. Lacey waved, "Hey, Eli." The boy looked up, smiled, then turned toward the tiger enclosure. Lacey blinked and watched him go. "Claire," she called out. Eli just walked off toward, but the mother was distracted, trying to help another child tie his shoelaces. Meanwhile, the crowd thickened near the north fence. The tiger enclosure was always a centerpiece attraction, and with Hunter's recent, strange behavior, curious whispers had drawn even more attention. A group of children leaned over the rope barrier where staff had placed temporarily restricted area signs, their sneakers pressed against the loose gravel edging the hill. Rachel had tried to widen the perimeter, but Glenn, the operations director, had quietly trimmed it back the night before. "We can't scare people off during a festival," he'd said. "Besides, the slope's been quiet at that moment." Rachel stood near the snack pavilion, clipboard in hand, scanning crowd density. She was midway through making a radio note when she saw something that snapped her spine cold. Eli, alone, standing just beyond the restricted line, mere feet from the edge of the slope. She dropped the clipboard. "Eli," she shouted, but the music was loud, and the crowd between them too dense. Hunter, who had been lying in the shade near the rear of his enclosure, suddenly stood, his head turned sharply, eyes locked not on the crowd but on Eli. He began to move, first a step, then two. His body flowed like liquid muscle toward the corner fence. He paused for a half-second, breath flaring, and then, with one deep thrust of his weight, Hunter launched into the barrier. Metal groaned. A sharp crack tore through the air as the fence joint gave way, bolts snapping loose like teeth from bone. Gasps rippled outward as the giant shape burst from the enclosure in a cloud of dust and steel. People screamed. A child dropped their balloon. A man fumbled his phone. Lacey turned just in time to see the tiger, a blur of orange and black, racing not toward the plaza, not toward the food stalls or screaming guests, but toward the boy on the hill. Eli hadn't moved. His hand was still on the rope line, watching Hunter not with fear, but curiosity. He took a half step back just as the first tremor hit. The earth beneath his feet shuddered. A breath later, a deep cracking sound split the air. Rachel sprinted forward. At the same moment, Hunter charged. The tiger crossed the field in seconds, a blur of fur and fury, his paws ripping into the grass. He leapt, not at Eli but past him, his massive body colliding into the boy like a linebacker, sending Eli sprawling backward in a tumble of limbs and dust. And then the ground collapsed. The edge of the slope, weakened by weeks of silent movement, gave way in a roar of soil and roots and splintering wood. The viewing benches, once bolted in place, vanished into the churn. Chunks of earth peeled back in thick brown sheets, swallowing the spot where Eli had just stood. The dust rose like a curtain for a few long seconds. Nothing moved. Then, through the haze, came a single, soft cry. Eli. Rachel reached him first, dropping to her knees beside the boy. He was scraped, breathless, but safe. His eyes were wide, confused, lips trembling. She scooped him into her arms, holding him tight as staff swarmed the area. But Rachel's eyes searched for one thing, and then she saw him. Hunter lay a few feet from the broken edge, chest rising and falling with heaving breaths. His body stretched low to the ground, not in pain, but in watchfulness. His head turned slightly, golden eyes scanning the dust. He had not run, he had not attacked, he had made a choice. Behind them, Glenn stood frozen, a walkie in one hand, his face pale as parchment. Security didn't speak, Volunteers cried openly. Parents clutched their children. In the silence that followed, it was clear to everyone. Whatever had just happened wasn't instinct. It was something else, a choice. The dust hadn't yet settled, but the truth already had. Paramedics moved quickly through the yellow haze still hanging over the collapsed slope, checking limbs and eyes, brushing dirt from faces. Eli sat on a blanket, bundled in an oversized emergency jacket that engulfed his small frame like a cocoon. He was quiet, shaken, scraped, but safe. His mother, Claire, had dropped to her knees the moment she found him. Hugging him so tightly, it seemed she was trying to fold him back into her body. Her long brown hair, usually tied in a neat bun, had fallen loose around her shoulders. She was crying openly, not from panic anymore, but from the terrifying clarity of almost losing her child. Hunter lay a few yards away, chest heaving, his massive body half covered in dust. One of his front legs bled from a jagged scrape, but he hadn't moved since the earth collapsed. He wasn't hiding, he was watching, still trained on the broken edge where the hillside had given way. His body didn't signal fear, it was caution. Stillness born not from exhaustion, but from vigilance. Rachel stood beside him. Her boots sunk into the soft earth. She was coated in sweat and grit, her hands still trembling from adrenaline. She glanced up as Marcus approached, holding a sheaf of printed readings, soil density, seismic tremors, slope velocity. This wasn't theoretical, Marcus said, his voice steady. That slope was ready to give, it just needed one more vibration. He paused, his eyes lingering on the tiger. And he knew, long before we did. Behind them, Glenn, the operations director, hovered near the edge of the safety perimeter. Silent. Pale. He hadn't said a word since the collapse. His suit jacket was stained with dust, and his pristine clipboard now hung uselessly at his side. The arrogance that once lined his voice had vanished, replaced with something hollow. His gaze flicked between the destroyed viewing area, the media now gathering outside the gates, and the tiger who had defied every human assumption. The board met the next morning. For once, the tone was somber. The video footage had gone viral overnight. Headlines buzzed across the internet. Tiger saves child from landslide. Hero or instinct beast turns guardian. Wildlife forums exploded. Scientists debated. Mothers cried. But Rachel, sitting at the head of the table, said it plainly. We almost silenced the only voice that tried to warn us. That animal. She paused, glancing out the window toward the enclosure. Risked his life to save one of ours. The question isn't whether we contain him. The question is, how do we honor him? And so, change began. Hunter's old enclosure, once built with distance and control in mind, was dismantled in its place. Architects and engineers designed something new. It wasn't just larger, it was open, with enriched terrain, climbing structures, and a shaded den nestled beneath a real oak tree. The fencing remained secure, but transparent, offering full visibility with none of the harshness of bars or bolts. The sanctuary brought in Sarah Moreno, a soft-spoken landscape architect in her late 30s, known for her wildlife-conscious designs. She had wavy black hair always tied with a pencil and an easy smile that didn't mask her perfectionism, raised by a deaf mother. Sarah had learned early how to observe without assuming. She took one look at Hunter and said, "He needs sight lines, not fences." It took 3 months to complete, and when the new habitat opened, it wasn't marked by flashing banners or ribbon cuttings, but with a quiet ceremony beside the enclosure. A small bronze statue was unveiled. It was a sculpture of Hunter, not rearing in aggression, but crouched, eyes forward, paws extended in protective stance. At his feet, cast in copper, was a child-sized handprint. The plaque read simply, "To the one who watched while we looked away." Eli returned that day. His left arm was still wrapped in gauze, but his steps were steady. He held his little sister's hand, Amelia, age 3, who wore a fox hoodie with ears on the hood and carried a tiny stuffed tiger under her arm. Their mother trailed behind, watchful but calm. Hunter was resting under the fig tree when the children arrived. He didn't rise. He didn't need to. He opened one eye, watched them through the glass, and then, slowly, closed it again, not in dismissal, in trust. Later that evening, as Rachel walked the quiet grounds, she saw Marcus kneeling near the slope's new retaining wall, running his fingers through the earth. He didn't notice her at first. When he did, he stood, brushing off his hands. "You staying on?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, they offered a full-time contract." I said, "Yes." "Figured I still have more to listen to." Rachel smiled. "Just slightly. Good. We need people who know when not to speak." Far off, the sky turned to gold. The hill was quiet, the ground steady, and beneath a soft blanket of leaves. Hunter lay still, his flank rising gently with each breath. No longer guarding, no longer warning, just resting. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive with lightning or wings. Sometimes, they come on quiet paws, through creatures we underestimated, in moments we didn't expect. Hunter wasn't just a tiger, he was a messenger, a guardian sent to remind us that life speaks, even without words, that nature has wisdom deeper than instinct, and that when we choose to listen, we open the door to grace. Perhaps, just perhaps, God didn't send a voice from the heavens that day. He sent a tiger. Let this story be a reminder. The divine often shows up through the humble, the silent, the misunderstood, and maybe in your own life. The warning or the wonder you're waiting for is already near, in the quiet moments, in a child's hand, or even in the eyes of an animal that sees what we cannot. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs a sign today. Comment, "Amen," if you believe animals are one of God's miracles. Subscribe for more stories where hope roars louder than fear. And may God bless you and protect your family, just as He protected that child through the most unlikely hero. Stay grateful, stay watchful, and always stay kind sometimes. Miracles don't come with lightning and thunder. Sometimes they walk quietly on soft paws through snow-covered forests, answering a call that only the heart can hear. In a world full of noise and doubt, Snowpaw reminds us that faith, love, and loyalty still live in the quiet corners of creation, and that perhaps, when we call out in our darkest hour, something hears us. Was it chance that brought Eli to safety, or was it a divine answer to a whispered prayer? The kind of intervention only God could arrange through one of His most unlikely messengers. Maybe God doesn't always send angels with wings. Sometimes, He sends a lion with a memory and a promise. So, in your own life, when things feel lost, remember, even the coldest storm can carry grace, and even silence can answer if you believe. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below and write "Amen" to honor Snowpaw's journey and all the unseen ways God watches over us. Don't forget to like, share this story with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe for more powerful true stories that remind us of the love that still moves in this world. May God bless you and keep your family safe, just as He did for Eli.